up? We got the 2003 YZ450f Supermoto that I built up. Today we are going to be changing out the 03 clutch actuator arm and then clutch cable with the newer 2004-2005 clutch actuator arm, as well as the clutch cable and bracket, which is actually from a YZ450f that I added a little bit onto to be able to attach to the case down here using these brackets, which is where the later model 450s attached the bracket. So to start out this project, you gotta first drain the oil, which if you have one of these you should know how to do, but if you don't, you start it up, warm it up, get that oil hot. You would start up here out of the frame oil, 12 millimeter, drain out of there first, and then you go down underneath. Right here is the main drain bolt, and then from there, if you're doing full oil change, which I just changed mine so I don't need to, but then you just go on the other side and take out your filter. But for this case, I'm just gonna drain out the oil and throw it back in when I'm done. Alright, so once you take out the bolt and you got all the clips lined up, you should be able to pull this guy right out and your clutch cable will come free. Just like that. So while you got your oil draining, now is a good time to start removing the clutch cable. On mine particularly, I got the RSC clutch, so you can start by loosening up this guy, the lock nut, to loosen up the cable a little bit, or you don't even have to bother, but right here, the locking nut, line that up and start twisting that in, so that way the cable can come out there. And then you want to undo this bolt and the bottom nut, which is a 10 millimeter on the bottom and a, what is that, number 5 Allen key. So with the cable pulled out and all the slack removed, you are free to remove it down here, which should just be as simple as pulling it out and then working the cable out of the adjuster. Can be a pain sometimes. I'll come back. I had to use a little bit of a pick to remove that cable, but once that's out, you can go ahead and remove this cable completely, since it is no longer used, as well as this bracket back here, since we're now going to be attaching the new bracket down here. So you can go ahead and take off that with just an 8mm, as well as crack this guy loose with the old actuator arm. Alright, next we came to the other side, so we're going to remove this clutch cover so that way the push rod can take the tension off of the actuator arm over there, so that we can pull it out. So you're going to have, I believe it's 8 of these 8mm bolts holding this guy on. Remove all those, and to make it easier to pull it off, I removed the brake lever, which is just one of those Allen keys right there. Alright, with your side cover removed, make sure to remember the order of the bolts, because there is a difference on these. Some of them are longer. Next you're going to remove the 6 10mm on the pressure plate here, so we can go ahead and do that. little bits at a time, obviously. Alrighty, we can take all that out. Alright, with all the bolts and springs removed, pressure plate can come out, and finally we can take out the push rod. And that is the only piece that's holding in the actuator arm besides the bolt retaining it on. So we come around the other side. Once we loosen up this guy here, this nut, this guy will be able to be pulled out and replaced. So I'll come back to you. Okay, with the bolt removed, you can see now our actuator arm can come right out, just like that. If you have a leak coming out of here, now is a good time to replace your seal. I didn't think about ordering that, so too late. And here is the old one compared to the new one. So very similar, just the location of the bracket itself in a slightly different shape. But. So I got the new one pushed in. It's as simple as just orientating it about like this and kind of working it in. Obviously, if you have the push rod pulled out for it to be able to slide in all the way, otherwise it's not going to go in. Once it is, it's going to go real close to the case there, and you're kind of just going to work it, make sure the spring is all lined up. See, the hole will work, so you can start putting in the bolt back where it was. If I can get it started. Yeah. But anyways, then you can push in push rod there, and if I pull the clutch cable this way, you can see it does in fact come out. Alright, with the bolt all snugged up, we can go to the other side and reattach your pressure plate, springs, and cover just as you removed. So I'll go ahead and do that and get back to you. Alright, with everything buttoned back up, cover, springs, and brake lever, we can go back to the other side. And that's pretty much it as far as internal stuff. So you can actually go ahead and, in my case, reuse the oil or put some fresh oil in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I still need to attach the bracket as well as the clutch cable. But I'll go ahead and add my oil back in the meantime. So I'll get back to you when we're ready to do that. Alright. With your oil filled back up, you can go ahead and now attach your bracket. It's gonna go on here. I'm not sure how these wires are gonna sit in there. I gotta play around with it, but you're gonna take out these bolts, and then I'll come back to you. Alright, finally back. Was playing around with my bracket for a bit because things weren't lining up as I was hoping for. Key things to note though, once you remove these, it's basically just putting on the bracket and replacing them. However, with the way my bracket was, since it wasn't an actual 04 to 05 bracket, you should really replace it with longer bolts. This one doesn't even engage. I just have it in there for the time being, just to show you. This one's the only one that engages a decent amount, but I'm going to replace both of them with longer ones. So you should really do that, but really the only thing left to do is just route the cable back on and back up the clutch. The only other thing I did was I just tucked the wires behind the bracket, just because that seemed to work, and they still got some slack in there. So yeah, I'm just gonna put the clutch cable back on. Alrighty. Here's the finished product. I got the clutch cable back on. A much easier routing as it just goes right down, follow down the frame, through a little zip tie there to keep it close from hitting the fender, and then out and about, and goes right to there. In the future, I would really suggest, well, for me, I would suggest trying to find a 04 to 05 bracket, as this angle isn't really the greatest. I might wear through cables a little quicker, as opposed to if it was a little bit sharper down. I don't have my welder here right now, so this is the best I could come up with. I'll probably just re-weld it when I get that, or try to find an actual bracket, but pretty much that's the finished product. Works when you pull the cable, gives a nice feel. So I guess all that's left is to get a little test ride just to make sure everything's engaging.